The chime of the bell welcomes us to sacred time. Welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Houston, a congregation that welcomes you no matter what you look like or who you love, no matter how you practice spirituality, because we know we need not think alike to love alike. We extend a heartfelt and inclusive invitation to all who join us today for meaningful worship, whether here in person or online. Así como el creciente número de participantes bilingües que nos acompañan desde sus hogares. Please make note that the responses that are usually found in your order of service are now on laminated cards in the hymnals. They're easy to locate icons in the order of service to help you find the corresponding response. While mask wearing is currently optional, you are encouraged to continue to wear your mask if you feel comfortable doing so. And now please join Dr. Rock and our choir for our first hymn.
Good morning, everyone. I invite you to open your hymnals, the gray ones, to number 224, Let Christmas Come. And once you find it, I also invite you to rise in body or in spirit and join as we all sing together. Let Christmas come, its story told, when days are short and winds are cold. Let Christmas come, its lovely song, when evening soon and night is long. Let Christmas come, its great star glow on quiet city parks of snow. Let Christmas come, its table keep, love born again, the truth of dream. Thank you.
Let Christmas come, its lovely song, when evening soon and night is long. We are approaching the longest night of the year, and we approach a day of new births and new beginnings. We look forward to casting aside last year's calendar to replace it with a framework to hold fresh opportunities. The dawn breaks through the darkness with a promise of new life. During this time of anticipation, we reflect on the lessons we must learn to seize these new opportunities and the lessons we will learn because of them. During this time of anticipation, we feel the sun on our faces as it coaxes forth the potential within the seeds that have been planted, both within the ground and within us. We join together and turn our faces toward the sun, metaphorically this morning. Come, let us worship together.
Celebremos compartiendo nuestras vidas, encendiendo esta luz.
We light an Advent wreath to mark both the days approaching the solstice and the advent of Christmas. Inspired by the neo-pagan tradition, the first Sunday of December, we lit a candle in the south, honoring the element of fire. Fire burns away the old and creates space for the new. We kindle that flame again this morning. Next, we lit a candle in the east, symbolic of the element of air. Air gives the gift of breath and of spirit. Without it, we are not. Today we light a candle in the west, a candle for water. We are all born of water. We come from the watery wombs of our mothers. Watery blood flows through our veins, sustaining us. Like life, water ebbs and flows. Blessed be.
Sorry, I got distracted by all the pretty music. Now is the time when we sing the young on their way. I don't know that we have just a whole lot of young people here today, but, well, we have young people, just not young enough to go with Carol. So, nevertheless, we never pass up an opportunity to sing, so please join us all in singing as you go.
Please join me in the spirit that some call prayer and others name meditation. Open yourself to the wonders and mysteries of the world. Open yourself to compassion and empathy. Take one breath. Take another. Center yourself. Spirit of life, that some name God and others call the highest in human aspiration, be with us this hour as we worship together. Remind us this holiday season to lift up that which is permanent, the human spirit, the wonder of art, the glory of nature, the thirst for justice, the joy of companionship, while we come to peace with letting go of what is transient, the words we use, the rituals we share, all that exists for only a generation. O Spirit of life, call us to celebrate those things of permanent worth, and in doing so, help us to grow each ever stronger in connection to the glorious all that is. That it might be so, I invite the congregation to say amen. We pause now to lift up that which sits heavy and light in our hearts. We lift up Flossie Bodie, wife of former minister Bruce Bodie, as she continues treatment for ovarian cancer. We lift up Albert Puccio's mother, who suffered a health incident last week and is recovering at a skilled nursing facility. And we lift up Albert himself, who just yesterday suffered a heart attack and is now recuperating in a hospital. We send them both prayers and wishes for quick and complete recoveries. The memorial service for church member Shirley Holmes will be held this afternoon here in the sanctuary at 3 o'clock. She had asked that in lieu of flowers, donations be made in her memory to the congregation's endowment fund, the Houston Audubon Society, or the Nature Conservancy. Let us honor her memory. And now we turn to a practice inspired by African, indigenous, and neo-pagan traditions. We say aloud or bring to mind those who wish to be held by the loving embrace of this religious community. In this great cloud of witness, amid this beloved community, we hear these names and hold them in our hearts. Let us extend our empathy to all of the suffering and celebrate all of the joy that is amid and among our community that has not been named. Pause now in awe and wonder of the mystery, beauty, and diversity that is life. And so in the spirit of love, in the spirit of hope, and in the spirit of compassion, I invite each of you into a time of silence, meditation, or reflection.
Each week, our morning offering is shared with organizations that share our Unitarian Universalist values and through which we may live out our principles in the world. This week, we are pairing two organizations toward a common goal: Child Advocates and Montrose Grace Place. To tell us about this opportunity to donate, to help children and youth, we welcome church members Craig Ottinger and Marianne Cheslock to tell us more.
Good morning. For the last 30 years, child advocates have been provided by the court. These are trained volunteers to represent the interest of the children in foster care. They act as a go-between between the courts, the lawyers, the foster parents, the biological parents, the teachers, basically supplying whatever they may need and ensuring that they are provided for. This year, we chose to focus on the teenagers, and by supplying them with gift cards to various stores and services that they use, and hoping that this will let them feel a little bit more in control and learn responsibility on choosing how to spend the funds. Thank you for your generosity, and I know it will be appreciated. Thank you.
Good morning. This is the second week that our offering will be shared by Montrose Grace Place. Last week I spoke to you about the group's mission, which is to provide a safe, welcoming environment for vulnerable youth of all sexualities and genders who are experiencing homelessness. The group provides nourishment, healthy relationships, and hope for the future. Today I want to speak about that first goal, a safe place. I want to tell you a dramatic story about that work. My task is difficult because the story I'm about to tell you, not much happens. You need to understand that homeless youth are always threatened by hunger, weather, people who want to use their bodies. One response is to gather together in groups for protection. That is, join a gang. Now, gangs have colors, and youths are not allowed to wear gang colors when at Montrose Grace Place. If a person comes to a meal wearing a red or green shirt, for example, we take them to the clothes closet and give them a white t-shirt to cover up. Gang membership is one reason we always have a security guard on duty when we're open. Well, one night several years ago, this church provided the meal and a creative activity after the meal. In this case, adult coloring books with magic markers. The youth loved this activity. A typical night, a typical page in the coloring book might have a chrysanthemum, for example, with maybe 500 petals. We had several sets of magic markers, and in order to control the flow of supplies, let each person choose 3 colors. They could share markers and trade them in for new colors. I walked around for a while, making sure everybody had the supplies they needed, and landed up sitting at a table with 2 young men who were intently and carefully coloring detailed drawings. They talked while they worked and shared colors, but their focus was on careful coloring. At one point, one of the men got up from the table and went to trade in their 6 markers in exchange for new colors. And that's my story. That's all that happened. After the youth had left, the staff and volunteers gathered together for a debriefing. One staff member said, "That was the damnedest thing I ever saw," to which another staff member said, "I couldn't believe it." I had no idea what was going on. One of the staff explained, "Do you realize, Craig, that you were sitting with the leaders of 2 rival gangs?" Of course I hadn't. From the little I know, being a leader of a gang has crushing responsibilities, particularly for a young person. You're a one-person social service agency trying to keep your people sheltered, fed, safe, together. That night, 2 gang leaders, who knew each other because they were rivals, were able to put their burdens down and become simply young people having fun. They could drop their street responsibilities because it was safe at Montrose Grace Place. Safety is one of the precious gifts Montrose Grace Place offers homeless youth. Please support this work. Thank you.
Those in our sanctuary will find the instructions for text giving in the order of service. And those watching the live stream will see the instructions on your screen. Our regular Sunday morning offering collection invites us to weave a tapestry of love and action. We ask you to give generously. An offering will now be received.
Please join with me to dedicate the offering with the words found on your laminated card. To the work of this church, which is weaving a tapestry of love and action, we dedicate our lives, and these are our offerings.
Our first reading is entitled Morning Song by Joy Harjo. The red dawn now is rearranging the earth, thought by thought, beauty by beauty. Each sunrise a link in the ladder, thought by thought, beauty by beauty. The ladder, the backbone of shimmering deity. Thought by thought, beauty by beauty. Child stirring in the web of your mother, do not be afraid. Old man turning to walk through the door. Do not be afraid. Here ends the reading.
Second reading is from The Dawn of Everything, A New History of Humanity by David Graeber and David Wengrow. We are projects of self-creation. What if we approached human history that way? What if we treat people from the very beginning as imaginative, intelligent, playful creatures who deserve to be understood as such? What if instead of telling a story about how our species fell from some idyllic state of grace, We ask how we came to be trapped in tight conceptual shackles, so much so that we can no longer even imagine the possibility of reinventing ourselves. Here ends the second reading.
And now I invite you to open your gray hymnals to number 38, Morning Has Broken. Please rise in body or in spirit and join in singing. Morning has broken like the first morning. Blackbird has spoken like the first bird. Praise for the singing, praise for the morning, praise for the streaming fresh from the word. Sweet the new falls sunlit from heaven, like the first dew fall on the first grass. Praise for the sweetness of the wet garden, strong in completeness, where God's feet pass. Mine is the sunlight, mine is the morning, born of the one light, Eden's way. Praise with elation, praise every morning, God's recreation of the new day. Thank you.
This past summer, I had the opportunity to visit Perugia, Italy. My time there provided me an opportunity to reflect upon what is permanent and what is transient about religion and exactly what it is that many of us celebrate this time of year. Perugia is a relatively minor city. If you've heard of it, it's probably only because it was the site of a crime that grabbed international attention about a decade ago. I know about it because I have a friend who lives there. We were in graduate school together. Afterwards, I headed here and he headed there. He's an Italian citizen who directs a study abroad program that connects students from the United States with Italian academic institutions. My friend's position has prompted him to learn everything possible about the history of the city. Walking through it with him is an experience. Located on top of a small mountain, it is a winding maze that spills down the high ground into the flat land that surrounds the historic heart. And what a historic heart it is. As a settlement, the city dates back well over 2,000 years. The walls were built by the Etruscans. That's the civilization that came before the Roman Empire, and they still stand. Despite multiple invasions and numerous internal conflicts, their stone continues to ring the city. It's possible to walk through a rock-carved gate that has changed little from when Caesar Augustus restored it after one of Rome's many civil wars. Moving through the city is like traveling through time. There's an inn where the great writer Alexander Dumas once stopped. Over here we find a ring affixed to the city hall. It's what remains of the old stocks. On the other side lies the Via del Gabbia, the street of cages. That's where the condemned used to be suspended for all to see. This way we find something less gruesome. It's a fabled fountain Built in the 12th century, it celebrates the now vanished wealth of the one-time merchant elite. An incredible feat of engineering, it actually draws water uphill without the use of any pumps. There are statuettes for much of what used to be good about the city: fig harvests and fresh water, wine and plows, astronomy and philosophy, the old crafts and the ones that have endured. Come this way and you can find some of the few remaining marks of World War II. There are bullet holes to remind us of the struggles between the Nazis and the fascists and the anti-fascist partisans. You can even find some smashed fascist symbols to remind us of who won. But there's something you might find particularly interesting about the big cathedral that is at the center of the city. It is on top of the old plaza, right by the fountain and right across from the ancient city hall. Here's the thing about the cathedral. The building itself is not that old, at least by Italian standards. It was created a scant 700 years ago. But the site itself used to be a Roman temple. It was dedicated to Athena. And before that, it was an Etruscan temple. And prior to that, well, archaeologists think that it's been some sort of sacred place since whenever it was that human beings first came to live on top of this mountain. It's probably here that people came to worship the sun. The earliest languages and stories that were used to bless this place have all been forgotten. The holy whispers that gave the mountaintop its blessings have vanished into the wind. But there remains something about the spot here at the highest point where we can climb the steps and gaze down the plaza, watch the young communists sell their newspapers while a jazz band strikes up and the venerable and the fashionable sip their espressos, and see life play out. Standing on top of those steps next to my friend as he described the city he loved and reflected on the religious mysteries that have disappeared into the fog of time reminded me of a story related by the great Italian philosopher Giorgio Agamben. He learned it from the scholar of Jewish mysticism, Gershom Scholem, who learned it from a Nobel laureate named Yosef Agan, who heard it perhaps from his father, who heard it from the source himself, the Rabbi Israel Rishon, a mystic from 19th century Ukraine. The story might be familiar to a couple of you. I shared it in another sermon some years back. It runs something like this. Long ago, when the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the spiritual movement within Judaism known as Hasidism, faced a difficulty, he would go into the woods. There was a certain sacred place. When he reached it, he would light a fire and pray, and the difficulty that he struggled with would be overcome. When he died, his disciple would go to the same place, and he would say, "We can no longer light the fire, but we can pray," and his difficulty would be averted. Now, the Baal Shem's disciple died, and his disciple, the third generation, traveled to the place in the woods. This time he said, "We can no longer light a fire. We do not know the words to the prayer. We know the place in the wood, and that is sufficient." And so it came to the fourth generation's turn, the Rabbi Israel of Rishon. But the disciple from the third generation had not even told him where the place in the wood was. So all he could say was, "We cannot light the fire. We cannot speak the words. We do not know the place, but we can tell the story of all of this." And in the tale that Agamben recounted, that was sufficient. In the philosopher's interpretation of the story, this is what happens. Once there was a mystery. In the tale, it is called fire, to which the great spiritual teachers had access. In Hebrew, the words Baal Shem Tov mean the master of God's good name, and he was thought to have been a great magician, one who could commune directly with the fire. But over time, the connection to the mystery the story suggests has been lost. Rather than the mystery, only the legend of it remains. It's not a bad metaphor for the way many people approach Revelation, the divine breaking into the world, the opening of possibilities beyond possibility. In many accounts, Revelation is described as something that happened once upon a time. It's no longer ongoing. Most scriptures are meant to recount miracles that happened long ago, not ones that are happening right now. All we are left with is the stories. This is one version of the secular, the absence of the sacred. And I should note that my friend is not religious. Neither were any of his friends that I met when I visited him in Italy. The Catholic cathedral is for them an almost archaic curiosity. The site is something which once meant a great deal to their ancestors, but which, with each passing generation, is losing more and more of its significance. Yet, at the same time, the cathedral has set many of the city's pattern. Or rather, the sacred place that it occupies has shaped the very civic marrow. While few people attend the church, it remains the center of Perugia's social life. Follow any of the winding streets uphill, and you will eventually reach the worn-out stone steps. There's something about the story and the enduring way in which the cathedral shapes the structure of the city, which is suggestive to me about the holiday experience. Do you sense it as well? This time of year, many people celebrate Christmas in a fashion that bespeaks secularization, the evacuation of the religious from the ritual. The present incarnation of Santa Claus is almost an invention of early 20th century capitalism. The winter holiday has as much to do with consumerist consumption as it does with the celebration of Revelation. The glitz, the sparkle, and incessant refrains of holiday sales are almost enough to make me sympathetic to the old New England Puritans' desire to do away with the Christmas holiday. They viewed it as a great dishonor to God and a distraction from authentic religious practice. Bah humbugging aside, for a lot of people, Christmas does not have all that much to do with Christianity. Looking at the bright lights and decorated trees, hearing songs about Rudolph and Frosty, I can understand where the evangelicals get their demand that we put Christ back in Christmas. Not that, as a Unitarian Universalist, I have a great desire to do that. Our tradition has long attempted to separate what is transient in religion from what is permanent or enduring. And we've concluded that particular forms of religion are transient. They shift from generation to generation, but that the religious desire to connect with something greater than ourselves is permanent. Back to the cathedral. It is located on a spot deemed sacred for 100 generations. That space has been a place to encounter the holy, even as understandings of the nature of the holy have shifted over time. The earliest sun worshippers gathered there to directly worship the sun. What else they did, we do not know. Perhaps you can imagine their rituals, gathering in circles or waiting to keep a vigil at this time of year for the return of the sun. Then came the veneration of the Etruscan gods and goddesses, deities who appear to have had a great similarity to that found in Greek mythology. These were replaced in turn by the veneration of Athena, immortal patron of wisdom and warfare. In time, she gave way to the Christians' crucified Christ. And now, the spirit of the city seems to be turning towards some kind of humanism. The plaza where the celebrations and rituals of early generations were held are now dedicated to much of the beauty that we humans make. The city is home to an internationally known jazz and chocolate festival. The transient and the permanent. The slowly shifting significance of the site of the cathedral, Agamben's story. What do they suggest to you? To me, they suggest that there is something, we can name it fire if we wish, that we seek to connect with. The rituals we use to seek that connection may shift over time, but the desire to seek it remains. I detect this sentiment in Joy Harjo's fine poem, Morning Song. There she writes of the possibility inherent in the red dawn, and how that possibility, that sacred moment, is present for the child stirring in the web of your mother, and in the old man turning to walk through the door. For each, she suggests, there is something sacred to be found in this world. For each, she implies that something is slightly different. Each sunrise, a link in the ladder, not quite the same as what came before. Rabbi Israel of Rishon could only tell stories of the fire. The story was sufficient for him. But I suspect that when we focus on stories of fire, we get caught up in old patterns. It is one of the geniuses of Unitarian Universalism that we are not locked into the same old stories. We do not have to tell stories about someone else's fire. As I reminded you last week, in our tradition, we teach that revelation is not sealed. The fire is something that we each can kindle. The stories of others can guide us. We have the capacity to light a new flame, something we do each week when we spark our chalice. And we do so when we gather to imagine how religion and the world might both look different. In their recent book, The Dawn of Everything, David Graeber and David Wengrow repeatedly encourage their readers to probe what is in essence an essential Unitarian Universalist teaching. We are projects of self-creation. The Etruscan Mount, Athena's temple, the cathedral, Agamben's story, and this sermon are each things that we have brought into being, each reflections of rituals and of worship of a particular generation. There's nothing about them that is fixed. We Unitarian Universalists are always changing our liturgies for worship. The words spoken in this sanctuary are not the words that were spoken in it 2 or 3 generations ago. The service we hold in 10 days' time for the winter solstice is a different kind of ritual than the ones observed by the founders of this congregation. And yet there is something in common with all of them. Call it the desire for an experience of the divine, the search for the community, a connection with something greater than ourselves, the creation of a shared story. Whatever that mystery is, it persists. With their book, David Graeber and Wengrow try to prompt people to be more open to the vast set of experiences and different ways of being that humans have had over time. They hope to get us to recognize both that things that have not always been the way they are now, and that we can imagine new possibilities for the future. The civic building across from Perugia's cathedral is as good a reminder as the sacred mount itself of this. Over the millennia, the building has been an independent republic, part of the Roman Empire, ruled by princes, run democratically, controlled by aristocrats, subject to the Pope, and part of the Republic of Italy. The transient and the permanent. I said all of this because at the winter holidays, at the turning of the year, we are each challenged to reflect upon what is transient and permanent in our lives. How will this holiday season be different for you than ones that have come before? How will it be the same? These can be difficult questions to face, questions that remind us of those who are no longer living, those times when we will no longer be living. For holiday traditions are in part about the passing of things, for each year upon this earth is different than the one that came before. But we also have them to give life a sense of permanence. The world may ever be shifting, but we return to the rituals we have year after year. So I end my sermon with an invitation and a blessing. The invitation is this. I invite the sermon to offer you an opportunity to reflect upon what is transient and permanent about the holiday season. What is it that endures year after year, generation after generation for you? What do you hold on to? What do you want to pass on to those who will come next? And what would you like to let go of? What connects you with the highest, the sacred, and what does not? What is most important to you at this time of year, and what is not important? The transient and the permanent. Our Unitarian Universalist tradition invites you to ask and answer these questions. Instead of taking the holiday as fixed, we recognize that it is much like the Mount at Perugia, changing over time but still centered on some mystery, be it the mystery of the divine, the mystery of human beauty, or the mystery of another sunrise. The blessing. O Spirit of life, known by many names, may we each, in our own way, find something of the holy, the permanent, this holiday season, and each day that dawns in our lives, however we name it, however we understand it. That it might be so, I invite the congregation to say Amen.
I invite you to turn your teal hymnals to number 1057, Go Lift It Up. Then rise in body or in spirit and join as we sing.
You have the words of the extinguishing of our chalice on your card. Let us together read them. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Let us leave this place blessed by love, blessed by the sun, the stars, and the moon, lifted up, and celebrating that which is permanent, however we choose to name it. Go in peace, go in love, may our lives be a blessing. Amen. Thank you so much for watching our service today. We're glad you're part of our online community, where we welcome people who are diverse in faith, ethnicity, history, as well as gender identity and sexual orientation. There are many different ways you can get involved in our community. One you can do right now is by clicking like below or subscribing to our channel. If you're interested in joining our congregation, please email us at membership@firstuuhouston.org. Thanks so much for joining us.